Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Mehraei, and today we are going to deal with basics of SPSS. If you are dealing with statistical problems and your background is not related to mathematics or statistics, this software is for you because it doesn't contain very complicated programming. It's very user friendly and you can even compare it with Microsoft Excel. Alright, so the first thing we should know is about these two views in SPSS, data view and variable view. We constantly switch from one to another, but what are they? In Excel, as you know, you can define all the data, even the titles, as the rows, right? So first row, second row, and so on. It doesn't have any number here. These titles should be defined by us inside the variable view. That's actually the beauty of SPSS and the advantage it has comparing to Excel. So you can show what's the type of your attribute here. So you see there are different features that you can use just to define your attribute and show what's the title of that. So here, that's what we should do inside the variable view. And in the data view, usually we enter our data. So simply like Excel, you can click on the cell that you want to enter your data. You can write new names and then enter each data separately by simply typing in each cell. But let's deal with the variable view, which is new to us because you already know about Excel. For names, for example, so this is the title that you use. The type, here by clicking on the right side, you have some options. You can see there are some options for you. Numeric and string are used a lot. And you can just choose one of them. For names, there are characters, right? So we choose string. For numbers, we use numeric. And there are other ones that are not used as frequently as they used to, but they are obviously useful, like date, for example. For time series, we use them. And you can specify what's the limitation, how many characters maximum it can have. You can choose as much as you want, let's say 40. If the name, the characters of each name is more than 40, it doesn't consider the other characters after that. So here, if you chose numeric, for example, for heights, then you can say, for example, how many digits I want on the left side of my decimal point, how many I want on the right side. Since I've entered the data based on centimeter, so I don't even need decimal, so I can make it 0, right? The same story about weights. So you see, whatever you do there, it will affect your data on the data view. All right. Next, about labels and values. For example, for gender, I chose numeric instead of string. I could say male or female, but I chose numeric. In that case, I could enter data like 1 for male and 2 for female, right? But here I should say exactly what I mean by 1, what I mean by 2. So here, you can say value 1, for example, corresponds to male. You add it here. And value 2 corresponds to female. And add it here. Okay. So that's the way you can define labels and values. So later in analysis, when it considers 1, it understands that this is actually male. When it considers 2, then it is female. So you can choose as you like. All right, this one is related to missing data. Automatically, if you don't enter any data in some parts, automatically you can specify what SPSS can do to replace those values. If you leave them like that, it means that they will remain empty if there's no data entry in that place. And there are some alignments, as you can see here, that you can apply to make your data looks nicer in your data view. And here, this one is very important. This one shows the attribute type. There's a video inside it I explained about them in details. I will provide the link for you in the description section down below. But very briefly, I will explain about them and you will see what I mean by them. Let's go through all the options that SPSS gives us here. Nominal. What does it mean? Nominal attributes are those ones that you cannot compare them with each other. For example, male versus female. I cannot compare them. Otherwise, you will get in trouble, right? If you say, for example, male is better than female or female is better than male, you will get in trouble. Obviously, if I consider other attributes with respect to gender, like for example, males are taller in average comparing to female. Yeah, this is a comparison. But we are talking about only gender itself. We shouldn't be confused about that, right? So when I want to choose the type here, I should think only about this attribute. I shouldn't think about other attributes, like, for example, which one is taller, which one is heavier. I don't care in that attribute. The only thing matters is just this attribute, okay? So here when I want to choose, I choose nominal. Why? Because I don't know which one is better than the other one and how much that one is better than the other one. Okay. So other examples of nominal could be, for example, names, could be even class numbers, student numbers. You see, they are numbers, but they are nominals. But if I want to, for example, change the topic, like, for example, about student numbers, and based on those numbers, I want to insert the students in different classes. To partition them, maybe I make some restrictions to say, okay, those students who have, for example, student numbers starting with 23 should be in this class. So these are ordinal type in that scenario, okay? So it really depends on the topic that we are talking about. But in general, you can consider them as nominal. All right. So about the weights or heights. And before that, let me talk about ordinal, by the way. In ordinal case, you can compare the attributes together, but you cannot say how much the other one is better or worse. For example, let's compare good and bad together. I know good is better than bad, but how much is this one is better? We don't know. There are no units to say, for example, how much good is better than bad. You see? So these ones are ordinal. And for scale, we can divide them actually into ratio and interval in the statistics. But here in SPSS, they call all of them scale. It means that you can compare them, and at the same time, you can say how much the other one is better in that attribute or feature. For example, the height. Someone is 180, the other one is 170. So 10 centimeter, the other one is taller, you see? So we can compare and at the same time say how much. For weights, the same story. The weight is 40 and the other weight is 80. So twice heavier, we could say that, right? But there is a difference between interval and ratio attributes which SPSS doesn't consider. Like, for example, summation is a load in interval attribute, but for multiplication, only ratio is allowed. Examples, like for intervals, the weather temperature. You cannot say that today is twice warmer than yesterday because the zero is relative, right? But for example, weight, you could say, for example, this guy is twice heavier than the other one. All right. But anyway, in SPSS, you can just simply call it scale and be done with it. Okay. So for weights, we consider scale. For heights, also we can consider scale. For names, we can consider nominal. Great. So for the role, this one I will explain later when we talk about transformation. But you can see we have some options here. especially partitions are very useful in time series. Hopefully in another video I will cover that. Or you can, you see, consider input target, both input and target at the same time. But this one, you can change them easily later. At the moment, you can just leave them as they are. Okay, so this is the basics about the variable view. Now let's back to our data. So here, let's sort our data based on height, for example, or weights. Let's do it for weights. It's already sorted for height. For doing that, you can simply right-click on weight and choose ascending or descending based on your text. You see, they are sorted. So you can apply the same story for all of the attributes. All right, so sorting is pretty easy for SPSS. You can even sort them based on alphabets with the same method. All right, the next thing is calculation. For doing that, go to Transform tab and Compute Variable. So what are we trying to do here? Maybe I want to apply a formula, weights and heights of these names. In order to do that, first I should define a target variable. You see, the row in the variable view that we have. Now this one is important. Now I can define a new attribute and consider the row as output here. So when I want to enter this one here, then I can choose that attribute from this box. And I can write the formula for considering all the input attributes here. So height and weight are the one that I want to use here. And for the predefined function, you can find them here by default. Just click on each one of them which you think you want to use. And you see there are different functions are defined here by default. Then you can use multiplications here and also the constants, and use different operations in order to calculate the new target attribute. All right, so let me talk about all the tabs briefly, or at least the ones which are useful for the beginners. For the file, it's very similar with the ones that you already know for micro packages. And for analyze, this one is very useful for us in SPSS. This is the advantage of SPSS over Excel itself, because it contains lots of data analysis here. For example, descriptive statistics, especially frequencies. You can calculate the frequency of each attribute using this one. Compare means for hypothesis testing. This one is very useful for running hypothesis testing. It even gives you very accurate p-values here. Or if you are interested to find correlation between different random variables, this one is very useful. For regression, not only find the correlation between the variables, find the formula for them. So this one is useful for that as well. Why finding a formula is important? Why modeling general data is important? Because not only you can find your or estimate your missing data, you can also predict the future for your data. You can extrapolate your data. You can create new data based on your previous data, which is very interesting. Regression can do that for you. And if it is based on time, then you can use time series here from forecasting option that you have here. So as you can see, it contains lots of options. Even non-parametric methods here can be covered. When we use them, whenever your sample size is small and you have no idea about your population distribution, then this method is very useful. That many scientists actually let that, but statisticians, they know that this one can be very useful and they use it in their papers. Okay guys, I hope this session was useful for you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss the future related videos. See you guys.